that's what the point of the mask is. So you can see I'm trying, you won't see me crying.
Hey friends, welcome to my review for 20th Century Boys and 21st Century Boys. Sorry for the wait. 2021 really is the year of me tackling all these huge series people have been wanting me to read forever. So yeah, let's not waste any more time. 20th Century Boys is a science fiction mystery thriller that was of course brought to us by the legendary Naoki Urasawa, and it was serialized in Big Comic Spirits from 1999 to 2006. It was then closely followed by the prologue series 21st Century Boys in 2007. This is a story that spans decades, but it begins in the late 60s in Japan, following Kenji, a young creative boy, and his group of friends. And you know, they're like any group of kids, you know, they run around on their bikes, running from bullies, making secret hideouts, sneaking away porno mags, but also creating stories. Yes, that's right, him and his friends, Yoshitsune, Ocho, Maruo, and a few others who pop in from time to time. There's a lot of fucking kids in this friend group, man. They create the Book of Prophecy, a story about a group of heroes saving the world from certain destruction in the year 2000. But as time went on, as most things from when we were kids do, it sort of faded out of memory. Kenji became very, very interested in the new rock and roll craze that was sweeping the globe. A lot of this friend group maybe moved away, they'd all drifted apart, and then the story picks up almost 30 years later in 1997, where Kenji is now a struggling convenience store owner. Yes, unfortunately his dreams of becoming a rock star did not really pan out, so now he is working a shitty job and is left to take care of his mother and his baby niece after his sister mysteriously vanished. And things become a little bit more odd once all of Kenji and his old friends are reunited over the death of one of their former classmates, Donkey. His death was suspicious to say the least, and as they attempt to look more into it, this keeps popping up. This symbol. This is a symbol of a new rising group known as the Friends. The Friends are, for lack of a nicer term, a cult. They are led by the Friend, a man who is very persuasive, very charismatic, and seemingly has special abilities. And they're all over the place now, growing in size, getting new converts. I mean, most people think they're crazy, but you know, they're there. But the thing that draws Kenji to this group is that this symbol was their idea. It was something that him and his friends came up with way back in the day. And then all of a sudden, people are dying. A lot of people are dying. A crazy amount of people are dying. And Kenji realizes, holy fucking shit, this is the Book of Prophecy. Someone who knew about the Book of Prophecy, that stupid dumbass story we made when we were kids, is actually doing it. And it's working. Fuck. So now it is up to Kenji and his friends to team up and hope to God they can remember what happened when they were 9. Because maybe if they can remember what happens next in their Book of Prophecy, they can prevent anything else from happening. But they also need to discover who this friend is. Who is causing all of this? It had to have been someone they know. It could even be someone who is among them right now. So this series is kind of hard to talk about. What I gave you was a pretty early basic synopsis, but the directions the story takes are kind of fucking insane, and I can't really talk about them without giving away major spoilers. So that's all you're getting for today. And I think that's a good thing, because I went into this series almost completely blind. I knew the basic premise that I just gave you, but I had no idea what was gonna come of it, and this series is definitely out there. If you go in expecting something like Monster, which was very grounded and realistic, you're not going to get that here. This is a wild manga. It is very over the top at points. It does lean into the supernatural, into the science fiction. At 22 plus 2 volumes, this is a very long series, and as you read through just a few volumes and you're already getting so many crazy reveals, you wonder how this can possibly keep going. You see, the way 20th Century Boys handles its reveals is so interesting because it's a series that almost always feels like you're near the end. Literally after like the second volume, it felt like it was about to reach its final climax. And you're thinking to yourself, how the fuck is this gonna go on for 20 more volumes? But they find a way, and it's kind of incredible and genius. The series really goes in wild directions I was not expecting at all, but it stays super interesting because of how well paced out the story is and the reveals are. One of the most interesting things about reading is never knowing when there will be a huge reveal that will change the entire course of the series, because that happens multiple times throughout. And it really never gets old. There are some times where they do a lot of teasing and you're worried, oh, this might get a bit annoying, and then it's like, boom, you get knocked on your ass, holy shit. And then we just get more build-up, more mysteries, more cool things happening. The story also has a bit of a non-linear side to it, where we are constantly flashing back to Kenji's childhood as they begin to, put the pieces back together. I think while these sequences are not nearly as crazy as the stuff happening in the present, they are still very welcome because, they do advance the plot. We do learn more things about these characters. And I think Urasawa just really nails the feeling of being a kid in the summertime. I obviously did not grow up in the 70s. I was more of a Great Depression kid. But going back to this time when you're a kid, you have all this free time to spend with your friends, it made me feel quite nostalgic, and I really enjoyed these sequences. But then we're quickly thrown to the present, where it's just so crazy, so much shit is happening. It tackles a wide variety of themes. The dangers of misinformation, fascism, things get we lean quite a bit into the dystopian here. Won't say much else on that. I definitely think some things hit a bit different reading this in 2021. All of these mature themes, compelled with a super engaging story that is never boring. This is all the type of stuff that I've come to expect from Urasawa, and I'm very pleased to say that my expectations were definitely met here. For the most part. See, 20th Century Boys, has an ending. And unfortunately, it's not one that I was particularly fond of. Now, don't get me wrong, there were still a lot of things in this ending I loved, and I thought how he concluded certain aspects of the story were brilliant. But the final parts of this series really heavily rely on the science fiction aspect of it, the more supernatural side of things, and I wasn't really super fond of how things worked here. You see, the thing about the supernatural element in this series is that it was so subtle, like, it was there, but, it was never really used all that much because you didn't really need to use it all that much. But in the end, they do use it a lot, and it kind of feels like an ass pull. You could do all this stuff, and you never did it before. And some of the more high concept sci-fi stuff just didn't really work for me in this series. Didn't really feel like humanity would really have this stuff, and where they do have it here doesn't even make that much sense to me. There's also a really super corny moment near the ending here that was so corny. I like it. It kind of made thematic sense. It was sort of connecting back to something that happened earlier in the series, but I could not believe that it actually happened in a series that was often so bleak. So yeah, I wasn't too big on the ending, unfortunately. That being said, the ride was still extremely worth it. Of course, thanks to how excellent the cast of characters are here. Kenji was a bit of a social butterfly. He had a shitload of friends, and all of them are exceptionally well-crafted characters. I think I would be hard-pressed to find a manga that has characters as well developed. And it helps that we meet them all as they are kids, and we just follow them on this long journey throughout their lives and see what type of people they become. And they all, of course, become very different people with their own stories and struggles. And when we catch up with all of these characters in the future and just seeing what they have been up to, it is really fascinating. Kenji was definitely a standout character here. As a kid, like I mentioned, he was super into rock and roll, all into peace and love, Woodstock hippie bullshit. So he's, super kind and caring, and he wants to help the world in any way he can. There's also Ocho, who, man is a badass, okay? He's definitely absolutely one of the best characters. He might even be my favorite character. Yoshitsune was another great addition. He sort of takes on a leadership role later in the series, which I thought was really fascinating because he's not really the leader type. He was sort of just thrown into it. And Yukiji, who almost had a thing with Kenji when they were younger, but then they drifted apart over the years. So seeing them, be thrown back together was pretty interesting to see. She definitely takes on a more motherly figure role later in the series. And now there's one more hero that it's very hard to talk about because it gives away major parts of the story. But there is another character with a very major role in the series who I just thought knocked it out of the park. They were wonderful. I mean, if you've read the series, you know who I'm talking about, but if not, you got a lot to look forward to here. I would also be remiss to mention so many of the side characters. Kami-sama, a former bowling alley owner who's homeless now and has dreams about the future. There's a police detective character who starts to catch wind of all the things that are going on. There's Kyoko, a high school girl who starts to look into things she probably shouldn't be. It's just such a fucking incredibly well-rounded cast of characters. They all get the right amount of development. They all get their moments to shine. It is really, really some master character work. And then, of course, you have the friends. Obviously, the main guy. The friend. Who is he? Who knows? I mean, you do find out, obviously. And I thought it was an extremely well-executed twist. A very, very shocking one. It's one that you could have figured out on your own, but the series does a really good job of, like, distracting you from thinking that way, so it comes as a huge shock. And once you do learn more about them, they become one of the most fascinating characters. Just seeing, you know, what's going on inside their minds. Really, really cool stuff. There's Majome, who's sort of like the friend's sidekick, his spokesperson, who's, you know, the guy always talking to the media and all that shit. He's a big old slime ball, but he was a really great villain, and I loved how they wrapped up his character, despite having issues with all of the weird shit that was going on near the end. So yeah, I really don't have anything but the highest of praise for this cast. I think it's one of the most well-executed groups of characters I've ever seen in a manga, and, yeah, good shit. Before I talk about the art, like, I have to say, this was a very, very Stephen King inspired story, which made me, as a fan of Stephen King, very, very happy. The most popular comparison is probably It, where you have, you know, this group of friends 30 years after they were children, all having to, you know, come together again and remember shit from their past. But there was also elements of, you know, Firestarter, The Dead Zone, The Stand. And I do think, like, this was an intentional thing, because they do even, you know, name drop Stephen King in the series at one point. There's nothing here that feels like, you know, a ripoff or anything. It was just, it had that Stephen King DNA, which is, you know, another reason I loved it so much. And then you have the art, and, you know, there's not really much to say here. I've reviewed Urasawa's stuff before. His art is really good. I don't think he has the best manga art I have ever seen, but the man can draw. He's very fucking talented. He has a really unique style in that you can always tell it's him, but the characters always look different, and they have unique features that you can always use to tell them apart. And that's important with a cast this big. None of the characters I found really looked the same. The few bigger moments of the series were done extremely well. It makes great utilization of, you know, full page panels and spreads. So yeah, I'm not like gonna go crazy gushing over it like I do Vagabond or something. But the art is as good as it needs to be, and yeah, no real complaints here. Those were my thoughts on 20th Century Boys, one of the more perfect imperfect series I have read. Yeah, I think so much of this series is absolutely masterful. I'm only going to be giving it a 9 out of 10 because of my issues with the ending. But at the end of the day, they really didn't affect my enjoyment of this series at all. I had an absolute blast reading it. And despite it technically being my least favorite Urasawa series I've read so far, I think it's an absolute must-read for fans of thrillers. And if you're interested in checking it out for yourself, Viz, of course, years and years ago released all of these single editions, which I think you can still get some, but most of them are probably out of print by now. But thankfully, though, just like their re-release of Monster, Viz has given us these really awesome 2-in-1 perfect editions. There are 11 of these in total, as well as one for 21st Century Boys, and the quality is absolutely incredible. We got these French flaps here, the page quality is excellent. It's really one of the nicest releases I think Viz has ever done, and I really hope they keep doing more like these in the future. Also, if you're curious, you do have to read 21st Century Boys. There's not even really a reason it needed, like, to be its own thing. It is the continuation, and it does wrap up most of the story. Unfortunately, there has not been an anime, and I hate it when I have to be pessimistic like this, but I don't really think there's ever going to be one. The series has been over 15 years now. I just don't think there's much demand for it. It would also need probably 100 episodes. Just be thankful we're still getting Pluto. I think we better still be getting Pluto. For alternate recommendations, obviously Monster, Urasawa's other, masterful series. It's not as crazy or sci-fi as 20th Century Boys, but, it's still a must-read. I'd also recommend Akira, another science fiction story that deals with similar themes, of which I cannot discuss. But yeah, if you're a fan of this one, check out that one. And with that, thank you all so much for watching. You can leave your thoughts on this manga and this review in the comments down below. And I will see you all very soon because, Oh, it is finally fucking time. Like, the minute I stop recording this, High Guardian Spice is fucking out. I am going to watch that shit. I am going to review that shit. It is going to be, so fucking, I'll see you guys then.